There. Now it's recording. And as everyone listening knows, we are not live due to technical difficulties, but that's cool. I've always wanted to do this, so welcome to the Skulls and Knives podcast.
I'll assume that that's not loaded.
No, it is not. It is very not loaded. I'm not that dumb.
I didn't.
I'm a little dumb. But yeah. Anyways, what's been up with you?
Man, all kinds of craziness. Just trying to stay on top of stuff at work. Try to stay away from COVID-19. All that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's been weird because, because construction is considered essential. We're still working, and we actually have quite a bit of work, and because I'm in water treatment and wastewater treatment, the work actually ramped up because they stopped spending money on some of the other things, and they figured they needed to spend it on water treatment. So our work's actually increased. We've had a lot of projects kind of pop up on us, and I've got a couple of projects that are challenging, so we're trying to get those wrapped up so we can move on to some of these other new projects that are out there. And but yeah, it's been good, but it's been a little hectic for sure.
Yeah. My days have not been hectic. They've been very slow and very monotonous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been brutal. I'm kind of over it. I want everything to go back to normal all of a sudden. It's like, this sucks. Yeah,
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't glad I didn't have small kids.
Yeah, they're interesting. Well, it just sucks because they can't go play on the playground or nothing. So like
Right.
The best I got is like a plastic slide on the patio, and like luckily they enjoy that. So a lot of the days, and it's nice outside here, so I just typically will leave the patio door open and let them come in and out as they please. And so, but still, you get that kind of like Stockholm. They're not Stockholm syndrome. That's a different syndrome. That's the loving your captor syndrome. But cabin fever. That's
cabin fever. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm feeling that hard. Just getting all day today. I was just super tense, antsy, and nothing was working right. And I'm like way up here on my energy and stress levels, and it was just all damn day, which was no good for anyone, including myself. But I've calmed down significantly in the past few hours.
That's good. The White Claws probably help.
This is the first White Claw I haven't. I attribute it to eating some pizza, and I just was like, everything's back to balance in the world. There's more fat in my arteries now, and now everything's just. It's like the fat is just like congealing everything and making me slow down. You know, it's just like all the grossness and grease is just like, slow down, buddy, slow down. And I'm like, all right, grease, I got you.
That's funny.
Yeah, yeah, like I've been working out through this, but my eating habits have been horrible. Because I'm a boredom eater.
Yeah.
And so I just get bored and I'm like, what's a couple of chips? What's a couple of chips? What's a couple of chips?
What's a couple of bags of chips?
Yeah, what's a couple of bags of chips? Cases? How far do we go? Aisles?
Right.
Yeah, and like, I just get sick of doing dishes every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm like, why don't we just order out?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've actually gained 7 pounds since the start of the COVID, which sucks because I'm
They,
working out about the same amount, but then I'm just
but
eating
that's why
crap.
it's called the COVID-19. Like you get the freshman 15 or the COVID-19.
Let's pray to God I don't get the COVID-19. I'm kind of over it
you
at
you
10.
thought the COVID-19 was the virus, but it's really the 19 pounds you put on while you've been quarantined.
Yeah. I bet you that's going to be a thing here once this is all over. People making jokes and memes once it's all on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I bought a shotgun, so that's cool.
I saw that.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Yeah, and I've been getting like all little sights and stuff for it and different little new things to attach to it. My flashlight holder is supposed to be coming soon. And then yeah, I got a buttstock shell holder today,
Cool.
which was
Yeah.
pretty cool. But yeah, and then I'm supposed to be going to the range here sometime in the next few weeks with some of the SRA guys.
What's
And
SRA?
then Socialist Rifle Association.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I paid dues with them, and I'm not through the vetting process yet because they do that in person.
Mm.
But it's
They got to
letting
make
me.
sure you're socialist enough, or what?
No, they just got to make sure you're not like someone trying to infiltrate them
Infiltrate, yeah.
and destroy them. It's a similar vetting process that NRA does. It's just like, yeah, just show up to a meeting and we'll ask you some questions about your life, and like maybe we'll look at your Facebook when we leave. You know, it's not like
Right.
a background check or anything crazy like that.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm supposed to go shooting with some of those guys in the next couple weeks.
Very
Once
cool.
it's not doom and gloom outside. So
Doom and gloom weather or doom and gloom quarantine?
Doom and gloom weather.
Ah.
Yeah. So the SRA like official events got canceled because of COVID, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the guys are like, hey, I know basic marksmanship. If anyone's new to the game, there's a lot of new people in there. There's like 10 a day at least just in the Portland one. And so anyways, they're all saying like, hey, I'll go out with you, like wear your masks and I'll show you how to, shoot your gun right and everything. So
I'm laughing at the vision of all these people standing around in masks with shotguns and rifles.
Right. But yeah, so that's pretty cool. I'm pretty excited for that because I haven't shot a gun since I shot them with you, and then when I was in Texas that summer as well. So it's been a minute. So it'll be good to meet up with some of these guys who are experts at it and have them show me how to do it properly.
That's cool.
But yeah, that's what a majority of my free time has been, is that just talking to those guys and getting more information and stuff. Yeah, that's all I've been doing. Sitting at home and watching videos on how to use shotguns. But anyways, so I had some requests from various people to touch back on a couple things that we talked about in the last pod. Yeah.
Okay.
Which I didn't read until like 15 minutes ago. I didn't even know that anyone had messaged me.
I was going to say, I'm just impressed that someone wants to hear more.
They usually don't. And so, at least they don't say they do. What's up?
I was just wondering who messaged you.
Oh, who messaged me? Some of my friends messaged me on Facebook about the socialist pod that we did.
Oh.
Yeah. And anyways, so one of the things that some people wanted us to expand on was um, how, like, and this is a question I had too that we didn't really get to in the pod, if I remember correctly. How would a libertarian society like defend or maintain the civil liberties afforded the citizens?
Okay.
That's a question I got.
Yeah. Well, and let's just be clear. I will definitely am not the libertarian spokesperson, or
No.
even honestly, I don't know that I'm 100% libertarian. I just know that I lean that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that most libertarians believe that the government does have a role, and that role is important. It's to keep the peace. It is to help to guarantee the civil liberties of the citizenry, if you will. I guess one of the things that I look at um, from or think about in terms of libertarian philosophy, if you will, is it's in general, it's smaller government, it's less government, and it's less regulation. And by doing that, you're pushing people to be responsible for themselves, and people to kind of stand on their own 2 feet and be a contributing member. It's interesting that a lot of um, the things in libertarian thought also coincide with some other people's philosophical points of view, politically speaking. One of the people that I thought was great in every interview I heard her in was Tulsi Gabbard. And, she was definitely not a libertarian, but she had a lot of similar thoughts, ending these sort of never-ending regime change wars, and that became a theme of hers. And getting out of countries where we don't belong, stop being the world's policeman, and really just focus on home and the people we have here. And I think a lot of those ideas kind of carry over. But I guess going back to the original question, the libertarian mindset is not that government is all bad and that it all needs to go away. It's that government needs to be limited in its role and its scope to a very specific things. And there's a lot of that philosophy that I think is really valuable. I mean, if you think about the overreach of government, whether it be the Democrats or the Republicans or anybody in between, um, there's always something that feels like they're just taking one more little piece and one more little piece and one more little piece. And so scaling that back, I kind of joke sometimes that, if you just vote for one Democrat and one Republican straight down the line, then they'll just have gridlock and nothing, it won't get any worse than it already is, because they'll just argue the whole time, and it'll be a tie and we'll be fine. The rest of us will live our lives, they'll argue, and then it'll be good or whatever. But, so I guess that's the thing, right? Government would have a role. One of the things that goes along with that is the idea of states' rights. And this is where, I am not a constitutional scholar at all, but I really do believe that local governments and local communities should have the ability to set their own rules. And if you were to do something like that, what you would have is, a baseline set of rules that everyone has to follow, and then some would be more strict and some would be less strict, but everybody would at the very least follow that minimum set of guidelines. And to a certain extent, you see that, California's got a lot more rules and regulations in place than, say, Arizona or Nevada or Utah. So does, the whole California, Oregon, Washington. All three of those states have more regulation in place than a lot of other states do. But uh, in my mind, that's a good thing, because the people who want that type of government can go to that place and have a place that represents who they are, and the people that want a A less stringent government can go to that place, and you know, uh, what you'll end up having is people, trending to the places that sort of jive with who they are and what they're about. And if you decide that you want to live in a place that doesn't have all the rules you like, it's your right and your um, option to try to change those things. And if you want to work towards that change within your state, go for it. Um, so I guess I don't know if that answers the question, but the basic idea is that you've got a smaller government that is very limited in scope.
Heard. Um, yeah, my brain just when I don't know. Whenever I think of any philosophy, I tend to like think of the the extreme of that and then work my way back. So my mind immediately when I hear this question is the like if you're gonna scale back government, when does that stop and how do and I don't know. It's sorry, I'm coming off of a wild, windy brain day, but um, yeah. So how would making the government smaller and have less power actually maintain these civil liberties? Hey, Ty.
He was trying to sneak in. Say hi. We're live on the podcast. Yo, what's up?
What's up, dude? I forgot to put Naruto out. You just reminded me. There we go.
All right. Later.
Yeah, see.
That's my little brother, guys. Yeah, because
So
yeah.
go ahead.
Anyways, no,
Well,
go
I
ahead.
guess what I would say is that the truth of the matter is that any government really only derives its power from the consent of the people. So we have a constitution that is set in place that provides the government with a structure and a certain rules to follow, and we have three branches of government to check and balance each other and to make sure that one doesn't overstep. And that's why you'll have the Supreme Court say that the Senate can't do that, it's unconstitutional, or that the Congress can't do something if it's unconstitutional, and vice versa. You'll have the president go to do something, and the Congress will say, "Hey, wait a second, that's a power that's allotted to us. You can't do that." We kind of got down a slippery slope with some of the executive actions that started taking place in the 80s and 90s, and that's just become a regular thing now. But even that gets reined in a little bit with the Supreme Court and the three branches of government. So um, the um, the Constitution allows for a structure that keeps the um, government in check and in place, and it's up to the people to make sure that the government doesn't overreach that Constitution.
How do the people make sure that that doesn't happen?
Well, I personally believe that
Oh, hold on. Your audio cut out. Hold on. Your audio cut out.
oh, I cut out.
Oh,
Am I back
you're
now?
back now.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. For some reason, this thing is sucking the life out of my phone, so I may have to unplug my headphones here in a second to
Oh,
charge
okay.
for a little bit. So, anyway, but my whole point being, the Second Amendment. What I was saying was that I believe that the Second Amendment is one of the things that plays a really important role in that check and balance on the government and limiting the government's overreach. Now, someone's going to say, "Hey, what's your whatever shotgun or what's your rifle or whatever going to do in comparison to a tank or an F-16 or whatever?" And that's true, right? But that's really not the point. The point is that if you were to have all of the armed people of the United States stand up with one voice and uh, overwhelm a military, it could be done. I mean, if you look at the power and the might of the United States Army in Afghanistan doesn't, and it's not just the Army, it's the military as a whole, but, that's not been a really successful experiment, in Iraq. We went in and did shock and awe, and we, blasted our way through, and then there's still insurgents. They're still blowing up people on the side of the road. They're still ambushing us. And so, anyone who says that the United States military is an impregnable force it doesn't pay attention to history. That's what they said about the British Army during the Revolutionary War as well. So, I am definitely not advocating revolution, but that the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms is the thing that allows us to know that the government won't overstep their bounds.
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with Second Amendment. Basically, that everything that you just said. With my idea of a socialist society as well, that'd be a big thing. And honestly, like, a lot of socialists are really pro Second Amendment, which is pretty interesting to me. But just because it's the idea of that is painted in the mainstream as
it's a stereotype. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a stereotype that we're all against guns and stuff. It's like,
right.
No, not all of us. Vast majority aren't. But yeah, I mean, I agree with all that you're saying, but how do those people have the power outside of, let's say, the Second Amendment?
Which people?
The citizens. How would they have the ability to actually check a government outside of the Second Amendment?
Well, I mean,
let's say,
a libertarian mindset doesn't say that we abolish anything that we have in place right now. I mean, our representative form of government is the American experiment, if you will, has proven to be a good one. And it may not be perfect by any means, but it's definitely better than most. And we all have ideas about how it can be tweaked and shifted to be better. But I think if you look at the overarching grade for the American experiment, I think we're better than passing anyway. And there's a reason why people break their necks to get here, because of the opportunities that are here. So when we vote both locally and at a state and a federal level, voting is the most obvious thing that we can do, and it's the thing that's the easiest for people to do. The big challenge, I think, is the two-party system really becomes a problem for me, and that's because you just don't have. You're basically picking the lesser of two evils in almost every situation. You may have, on any given ballot, you may have one or two people who you just say, yeah, that person's awesome, and I totally am down with everything they say, and everybody else is, hold your nose and vote. And I don't know that that's necessarily a deal breaker, but it is problematic when you can only get one of two choices.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that really is a problem. And if you think about a parliamentary system like in England, or I was trying to think, I think Germany's like this too, but where you have multiple parties, right? So let's say you have 5 or 6 main parties, and so there's representatives from each of those parties in parliament and in government. And now what you have is a leader, usually a prime minister, who has to develop a coalition government, right? They have to figure out how to get people who don't always agree to work together and to govern the country together. And if you can't put that together, you basically have a failed governmental system, and you kind of got to go start over. And I don't know this for sure, so don't quote me on this, but I believe that's why Theresa May in England or in Britain is not the prime minister, because she could never put a coalition government together. Her time ran out. They basically said, "You're not the prime minister anymore. That's the rules." They went through another vote, and then they get Boris Johnson.
Hmm.
And like him or not, I don't know enough about him. Um, but I will say that that type of system allows for people from different points of view to work together on the things they do agree on.
Hmm.
And you'll notice that, if you ever watch Parliament, those people are yelling and screaming and
Oh
hollering at
yeah.
each other. And some of that's probably just, the culture, but a lot of that's because there's so many different points of view in the room. And it's not just one side pointing fingers at the other and these guys going, "Hey, it's good," and these guys going, "Hey, it's bad. We got more than you. It's too bad. We're voting it down or voting it up, whatever. Take your pick." Instead, there's all this debate, which causes people to be passionate and to care about what they're talking about and not just go along with the party system.
Hmm. Yeah, I just feel that, not that I disagree with you at all. I just get worried about big money in government, which I'm sure you worry about too, without having some sort of very strict punishable law, um, in order to make that not happen and not a regular thing, especially within the American experiment that, as he said, um, that we have here now. That's a massive, huge issue with a government leaning so much on representation to do all the bidding, um, as we do now, and even in a parliamentary system. Although I think the parliamentary system, personally, I think is a little bit better. Um, yeah,
I guess
just interesting.
so. Yeah, well, it is.
I'm not even making like a super serious point or whatever. I'm just
Right.
speculating right now, but
So here's a thought. If you have so right now our system is very federally focused. We have states that all have agreed to be part of this union, and as such, while they do have their own rights, they also and responsibilities, they also are beholden to the federal government for a lot of money, for a lot of services. Arizona is a good example. So, in Arizona, uh, we have massive dust control issues because obviously it's a desert, right? So when people are building homes or any kind of construction, dust gets into the air. Even well, you grew up here, so we have these dust storms called haboobs, and it's a downdraft from a storm pushes dirt from the desert into this giant cloud, and it just rolls through, and it's like, something from the Mummy or whatever, where it's just this
mhm,
crazy wall of dust that's a mile high and 15 miles, 20 miles long, and it's just rolling sideways through the desert. And um, so we've got all this dust in the air. Sometimes it's man-made, sometimes it's very natural. It's a desert we live in, and yet in order to get federal highway dollars, the Maricopa County which is the county that Phoenix is in, most populous county in the state, but we have to meet this. Uh, I'm forgetting the term now off the top of my head, but we have to meet a standard that says you're going to have less than X amount of particles in the air of a certain size. Well, you can control some of that because you can tell all the construction workers and construction companies that you have to put water on all the dirt to make sure the dust doesn't get in the air. It stays, on the ground almost as mud. And you spend a lot of water doing that. You can
mhm,
put chemical additives on the ground to help everything stick together, and we've seen, that happen quite a bit during construction projects and after construction projects. You can tell people that you got to limit how fast you drive on a construction site, and you got to have all these measures in place. And the only reason we even do it is because we've got federal highway dollars that the county needs and wants.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is that the minimum requirement, if you just had like during haboobs and dust storms, that so much dust is kicked up into the air that there's no way you're ever going to meet that EPA standard.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got the federal government saying, hey, if you want our money, you're going to follow this random EPA standard that's nearly impossible to meet all the time. So they just dangle the carrot out there, and say, hey, if you want all these dollars, you got to do this, this, and this. Well, does the federal government or the EPA really care about the environment? Well, yeah, no, I'm sure there's a lot of good people there that do. But if you look at what the rule really does, the rule really, it's nearly impossible to meet because we live in a desert full of dust.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, we're spending a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort to meet some rule that's almost impossible to meet, so we get federal highway dollars. And, if you had a local government or a state government that was in control of that, rather than, needing this big federal government to come in and save us, yeah, the roads might be crappy for a while because you're not going to have all these highway dollars. But at some point, the people of Arizona are going to say, you know what, we're really tired of driving on these terrible roads. How are we going to fix this? Let's come together and come up with a plan.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need the federal government for that, So, again, you're thinking that someone in Washington understands what's happening in Phoenix, Arizona better than we do is a silly thing.
Yeah, no, and I get the bureaucracies and stuff like that being silly. Which, like, in the system that I have laid out, you would still have some form of local governments that would hopefully suss out shit like that. But yeah. A question I had, and I was just curious about this because I was on hold with A.M.A.R.I.C.A.N, for my unemployment for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
On and off for 5 days. Just trying to, I think it was actually 4 days. But anyways, just trying to get my money. My account was locked for some reason. Anyway, so I sat on hold for a really, really long time on the last day. Called total of 3 different numbers before I finally got a hold of somebody. After about 3-4 hours on hold. But anyways, while I was doing that, I was typing out the experience on a Facebook post.
Mm-hmm.
Basically describing the music and my
Right.
thoughts while this whole thing was going on. I still don't think I'm ever going to listen to jazz ever again, period. As much as I love it, I'll be back. But anyways, and so this conversation got brought up with a friend of mine on the fact that Relia cards through the U.S. Bank, and so I understand that some other states and counties, and I should say other states, I think all of Oregon goes through Relia card, but basically, if you don't opt in to get a direct deposit immediately, they automatically start sending your money to Relia card, which is run by U.S. Bank. And it wasn't just me for this period of time. That would be different. But several of my friends here in Oregon were having trouble. We looked up and there was a heat map made of people having trouble with Relia card already. And basically everyone up the East and West Coast were having insane problems this entire week. And I know several people still have not gotten their accounts unlocked, and they've been on hold for days. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
literally spending 8 hours a day on hold, just waiting for someone to answer, and then they get hung up on because like the time limit's out or whatever.
Right.
And so like one of them, it's been almost it'll be 2 weeks if another couple days goes by. So almost 2 weeks of this shit where this person has no money other than what's on A.M.A.R.I.C.A.N, and has since switched their unemployment to the direct deposit. But yeah, so anyways, I was talking to this guy or these people, and it just got me thinking, like, if all the unemployment that's run by the government, people are they might be waiting for a little bit, but and not a super long time. Just people's checks are being delayed like a week or so. There are some occasional extreme cases of people's unemployment checks. I'm not talking about the stimulus check. Everyone listening, being delayed a week, and but that's because of the volume and whatnot. But anyways, what I've seen from the unemployment office, at least here in Oregon, is that they have their shit together, and they've been sending out everyone's unemployment. Everyone's shit's been working fine. There was a day where the servers crashed, and then they got new servers and got everything back up and running. So there hasn't been any issues on their end. But where I've seen a lot of issues, and obviously across the country, is with this Relia card and U.S. Bank. And I know it's just one, so this is just one simple example, but it got me thinking of like the implication of action when it has to also flow through the private sector, specifically when you're talking about things like unemployment checks or in a more broader view, how to deal with COVID-19 or a war. It just got me thinking, the more and more privatized it is, the more and more messy it's going to be. And the more and more issues I feel like you'd have with things like this, where a U.S. bank was not checked and prepared for all the money coming through, where they had several weeks at least in order to look out for bugs, etc., and like try and make this shit work and hire more people and get more people in phone banks and stuff like that. And they didn't do it. And so it just got me thinking about like how one example of privatizing everything actually made it fuck up for a lot of people. Whereas if everyone would have just gone with what the unemployment is actually doing with the direct deposit, it would have been fine. And so the question is, like, how do you deal with implementation of larger things? For instance, like if there's COVID-19 and you need to insert restrictions and stuff like that in a libertarian society where it actually works.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure that I have that answer. I mean, first off, I'm smiling a little bit because the state government in Oregon doesn't have to partner with U.S. Bank for Relia-Card or anything else. So it seems to me like they made their own problem.
No, I agree with that, and I'm saying that the privatization of that in general was a bad idea.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you. The difficulty comes in any structure of government. There's no way that anything is ever perfect. There's always something you're giving up for something else, and it's just a matter of what you value more than something else. So, do you value convenience? Do you value or do you value freedom? Do you value the and I was having this conversation with Maddie yesterday because she mentioned that they bought the bus and they're trying to downsize over time. And so as part of that process, they stopped using paper towels and stuff, and they just went to using fabric napkins, which,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's cool. More power to you. And, but I also said, but now you got to wash those. And so you got to have some kind of soap, some kind of cleaning product. Even if it's a good one, it's still a cleaning product. And you got to have some kind of water to wash and to rinse. Um, so what's the trade-off for you? Are you saving the, not using as many trees, and on the flip side, you're using 10 times as much water? I don't know the answer. I just
Mm-hmm.
want people to think about those things, because that's really where we boil down to it. It's funny because I talk about um, this idea of libertarianism, or the idea of um, having smaller governments, um, but at this and having less regulation in our life, and less taxes, and less a lot of things. But the flip side of it is that there are areas where we need to have a strong government in place that is restricted to its role and its duty.
Mm-hmm.
And the sneaky thing is that whether it be through privatization, or big money involved in politics, or the lobbyists would, take your pick, um, that large corporations have worked their way into politics, and into that, to influence everything we do. So then the question, just like the napkins, is, well, what's your trade-off? So if you want freedom from that, you also have to have you're going to have a flip side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So uh, can you have a capitalist um, society that is more libertarian in nature, that still restricts the type of money? And by the way, if you limit the size and the role of government in a society, you also limit the need to have lobbyists and pandering, because they don't have the power anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So if a senator can't get you a $20 million defense contract, then maybe you just don't need to take them anywhere on your jet, or defend, or um, what's the word I'm looking for? Donate to his cause. So there's everything's everything's a little bit of a balance. Everything's a trade off, one thing for another. And the trade off in your scenario here is going to be, you're going to have the potential for a private entity, a private company, to take advantage of some people.
Mm-hmm.
But the natural check and balance is, we get on Facebook, and we get on the phone, and we get on Instagram, and Twitter, and everywhere else, and we say, hey, this company is doing nasty stuff to people, and we should not support this company. And so let's band together and not support this company anymore. And eventually the market will make a change. We see something similar, especially these days. We see a lot of this with actors and actresses. I mean, there's people that just because they were friends of somebody, they have to go away for a while and just pretend like they don't exist for a while, because society is completely turned against them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just not a valuable commodity anymore. So there's some of that in play still, even as we speak. The power of the collective is pretty strong. So yeah, there is. If you had less regulation on private business, you would have the potential to, um, you know, uh, have people take advantage. But then you would also have the opportunity for people to band together and fight back. And um, it's like I said, it's never a perfect system. So
No, it's not. Um, Not saying just you. I wasn't like, no,
no,
it's not.
no, I know what you meant.
uh, but yeah, and I just feel like to the answer to the problem, for instance, of you know, a company doing bad things, or lobbyists and whatnot, is to um, rather than just simply make the government smaller and be like, okay, it's cool. It's just not as worth it to do it anymore. It's just to because of everything else you give up as far as protections with that. Um, I don't know, in my mind, it's more valuable to just make that illegal, make that not okay, and transform and change that government into a way where there'd be a less likelihood of said lobbying and whatnot, because not only making something like that illegal, punishable by fine or whatever that you have it be, you're also still allowing that government to have the power to protect those people. And to be fair, I'm not arguing about this for like this current style of government. I'm arguing for it as for a people actually at the top, direct democracy style government that we talked about last on the pod. That'd be more communist in nature. I'm not necessarily saying that this specific government that we live under right now should be doing this thing, which is the hard part for me, because part of me wants to go like, yes, I agree with all of, more restrictions, et cetera, but the other part of me goes, but I don't want this government to be doing all this restrictiveness. And so
let me ask you a question now.
Yes, please.
Yes, what's that?
I said yes, please.
Okay, so in a governmental system that provides more regulation, right? Mm-hmm. How do you it's a two-part, right? How do you limit the roles or power of that government to control or provide regulation, and how do you not only how do you limit overall like their power from growing, but how do you manage what those actual regulations are? And I'll give you an example real quick. Let's just say that collectively in the government, it's decided that people don't need guns. Nobody should need guns. So everybody needs to get rid of their guns. Bring it all in here. Let's bring it in and let's take them and burn them or whatever we're going to do with them. So how do you regulate the power creep in general, and how do you make sure that, like, what's the value? Because there are some people that are going to love everything about your idea of government, but that one thing.
Yeah. So I was writing down some answers while you were talking, so I didn't butcher my words as I butcher my words. So you limit the amount of regulation, let's say, and like what becomes regulation, simply by having the voting system go through the people. Now, you mentioned that could be a problem because other people may not think the way I do. And I think that would be, for the most part, be a natural ebb and flow that would have to happen. However, and again, this is my pie in the sky government, would have the First and Second Amendments that are in our current Constitution be revised into the new Constitution as two of the most fundamental things that you cannot change. No government, no voting, no nothing can change either of those, because they both allow the I forget is it the 7th or 9th Amendment or whatever, the slavery one. Anyways, you'd incorporate all these other good things that are in the Constitution currently into these things, but the first and second, along with some of these other ideals, would be things that could not be changed. These are things that could not be amended unless there was a coup and the whole government was taken down or taken over by another country. There would be no way legally to change those. No judge, no nothing could infringe upon those. So I'm sorry, what exactly was the second question again?
Well, just I guess how do you limit uh, or how do you decide what specific values this government has? I mean, you're talking about a country of how many people? I don't even know.
Millions.
Right? And
Mhm.
somehow we're going to get some sort of agreement on what the people want.
Yeah, and so that's the hard and I would say messy part at the beginning that you've seen a lot of these other communist states fail at, and turn towards totalitarianism post revolution in order to get their point across. And I'm still thinking and formulating ways how you would have some sort of government regime change, in a non-bloody way that could, um, possibly even, or excuse me, again, possibly even organically change the system into something that I'm talking about. Um, but yeah, you'd have to have some sort of deliberation amongst, maybe in transition it would be amongst all the political parties and whatnot. Maybe you have like a council of people meet together and discuss these things that would have to be picked, amongst a vast majority of things. Again, this is something that I've been I've been thinking about and trying to work on, like, how could you, I mean, there's 100 different ways it could possibly go, and all we've seen in history is a more violent way of doing it. Um, Not saying that I want that or necessarily, and I'm definitely not advocating for that whatsoever, but um, yeah, because like I said, that's one of the big failures of, like, for instance, Russia was, not only do you have, yes, you had the West, um, uh, trying to destroy it from its inception, uh, and you also had guys that like Lenin and Trotsky leading it, that twisted Marxism to fit their narrative of totalitarianism, uh, rather than actually making it about the people. And so that's something I've been thinking about, is like, how do you do what Marx wanted by actually using what the people want? Maybe, and again, it's hard because back in Marx's day, there was a lot more unions and more union representation, especially later on in his life. And so unions really did represent almost all of the workers. And so, and now you see that at like a 6% of the American workforce is union. Um, so it's one of those hard topics that I've been trying to work through. So I guess I don't have an answer right
So,
now.
by the way, the right to unionize and collectively bargain would be more of a libertarian idea.
Yes, on the yes, yes, and to be fair, Marx was super. I just knocked
Look out,
Naruto down.
Naruto.
I just defeated him. Uh, uh,
Ninja stuff right there.
it took off his head. Anyone just listening, just for fun. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I think that is a socialist and a libertarian ideal, right? The right to unionize would be something, right? But for instance, and I'm not speaking for all socialists here at all, because socialists range everywhere from anarchists that are actually really close to what you're talking about almost fully, except eliminate the government and then go take it even further and further, and then eliminate capitalism.
Right.
You have everything from that end um, to like a democratic socialist, where, and so I blanked on my thought. Anyways, I think that unions are beneficial in, and should be, similar to libertarianism. In libertarianism, a good thing to be pro and happy about, and for lack of better terms, super into, uh, because I think basically outside of totalitarianism, you're looking for it's a union of the people choosing to be in a union in order to protect themselves, and in order to get better benefits and whatnot, etc. So yeah, I don't know if unions necessarily play a massive role currently, although I wish they would. I wish they could, but yeah. So yeah, my biggest answer is I just don't. Going back to it, I don't know exactly how you would have that change happen smoothly.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, a smooth change like that would be very unlikely. But I will say that um, the uh, the interesting thing about um, a socialist society is the idea, for me anyway, is
Mhm.
that, um, and this is where I kind of waffle a little bit. I do think there's some really important basic responsibilities of government and roles of government,
Mhm.
and you know keeping the streets put together, and keeping the water and sewer flowing the right directions, and making sure there's power, um, making sure that the general safety of the public is ensured in terms of some sort of police force. um, these are all things I think are important for the government to be involved in. And I think, that honestly, I think healthcare is one of those things that the government has to be involved in. And I'm not sure what that looks like, but there is a certain point at which we have a responsibility to take care of each other. And if the government truly is a not this giant federal juggernaut that sort of takes everything. Oh, what I do? Hang on, touch the screen and lost you. Um,
There
there
you
we are.
are.
So, this giant juggernaut that just controls so much and has so much influence, but instead it's a truly a function of the people of that space and place. Um, you can come together and say, hey, we're all willing to. This is a great example. Like a state could easily say, hey, the people in California really want to band together, pay more taxes, and um, have universal health care. Okay, so cool. So if you want to do that, then move on in here to California and be part of us. And if you don't, then move out and go somewhere else. Um, and a lot of people think that um, we should take whatever we brought from our other place to the new place and change it, right? So
Mhm.
um, everybody, maybe some people in California maybe think that, hey, everybody should live like us, so let's try to make sure everybody else lives like us. Um, I may say that I think that the rules in any one given state are absolutely abhorrent, and I would not want to live there, and I would choose not to live there, but that would be my right and my freedom to do that.
Mhm.
Um, and just like if California were to say, let's do this, socialist experiment or whatever, and let's go hardcore on it, then there's a lot of people that would move there too. So, um, again, going back to states' rights, each individual local community being able to govern and guide itself as it sees fit. If you don't like what's happening and you can't seem to change it, then go somewhere where you can do what you want to do and be the kind of person you want to be. Um,
Yeah, I just have a, it just always concerns me about the people that can't afford that right and can't afford that ability to move state to state, country to country. Um, some of these people in lower income communities may not have the ability to just get up and move because they don't like the ideas of where they are, and they already probably don't have much of a say to do anything about it. And so unfortunately, these exact kind of people, with when you're talking about with healthcare, would be exactly the kind of people that would benefit the most from a universal basic healthcare system. um, and so my concern, although I'm all down for personal liberties, um, my concern with not having an overarching government doing these big important things and making sure that people have the right to things like healthcare, the right to live, um, which I think everyone has, to be given the opportunity to uh, prosper and change your stars. It's really hard to lace your boots up by the straps if you don't have straps, and you might not even have the boots. And so, and that's a metaphor to me, and just to be, I know you know it's a metaphor, but for like education and healthcare, um, and a big part of that being healthcare. um, and so at least in socialist societies, you have the idea of guaranteeing this these rights and the ability to move and basically move about the cabin in a capitalist airplane, rather than it being tied to your seat. And so, I feel like if you're going to have capitalism work for everyone, which I'm not even necessarily saying that it ever will, but if you're going to have some sort of free market capitalism at all, and have everyone actually have these rights and these liberties and whatnot, and it not be distributed and it be distributed evenly, and so everyone has a chance to do these things. um, I think the only way to move about that is to have stronger government and have um, things like you said, healthcare, um, not just available because California state legislature decided, hey, we're going to do this and have everyone do it. It should be at the federal level, and at least in my opinion. And then from there on, again, looking into the future, because you could have that at a global level eventually. I'm not talking, in the next 10 years or nothing like that. It's going to take a lot longer for reforms that large to be, um, changed and worked out and whatnot. But I don't know. I just see it as like the less and less restrictions you have, and the more and more you just go, oh, your place does this, your place does that, your place does that. The less and less ability you actually have for the people that are middle, lower class, working class people to actually be able to move up and change their stars. Yeah, the idea of possibility is there, maybe more so than now, but the actual hammer behind making that actually attainable isn't there anymore. And that's where I get a little concerned.
Yeah, and I guess I would argue that when I can go down the street and see the owner of the company, because he lives in my neighborhood and works in my neighborhood and lives in my community and goes to church or whatever, uh, and he has to sit across from me, that's more control than a um, multinational or even national size company that has a board of directors and whatever else and no real ties to the community.
So are you advocating against corporations as well then?
Well, so the way I'm the what I'm talking about is not so much against corporations. What I'm saying is that when you boil things down to local control and local government and people that actually see each other on a regular basis and wave at each other and go to church with each other and see each other at the park and all those kinds of things, that's where your control comes. And that's where your ability to level the playing field comes. It doesn't come with giant companies that are national or international, and it doesn't come with a government that just gives you a number and says you're, whoever, you're just a number in the system. You waiting on hold all that time for Rely-A-Card happened to be with a private company that was managing this thing and messed it up. But you said it was U.S. Bank, so it's a national company. They probably have international dealings. You're nobody to them.
Yeah.
But if the guy that was dealing with your insurance check might see you or your unemployment check might see you down the street and have an actual interaction with you and not just some nameless, faceless person in a call center somewhere, you might get a different level of customer service. You might get a different level of interaction and care from somebody that's in your community, that cares about your community, that wants to be there and that wants to make it a better place. And those people that don't eventually are going to get weeded out and go find a place where they do want to make that place a better place. Unless they're just miserable assholes, and then they just make every place worse. So again, it's not so much about again, we're talking about trade-offs, right? It's not in my mind. There's no way you cannot give everyone the same opportunity to I don't remember what you said, change their stars. It's impossible. If everybody goes up, then nobody goes up. There's always got to be somebody who's sweeping the floor, somebody who's cooking, somebody who's taking out the trash, somebody who's writing an email, somebody who's doing this, somebody who's doing that. And the fact that there are these levels gives everyone an opportunity to move up or move down as their ability and their skill and their determination get put to it. So how do you take that? You're a great example. When you were in high school and you were working at whatever that little place is over there off of Higley, and you were, a line cook back there, and you were like at one point like, I hate cooking. I hate being in this kitchen. I hate this food. I hate it all. I never want to do this. And then you got to Portland and you found a really cool restaurant that at the Doug Fir, you were able to explore some of the things you liked. You're able to work with great people with a great high level of work ethic and a high level of expectation for the food that was coming out. All of a sudden, you weren't just slapping burgers and sandwiches together. You were making art, and that drove you to make your art and craft better, which then allowed you to become a chef. And what's next? If you were to stay in that role, what's next? There's something next, right? But there's a place to go. There's a step to take to get better, to do the next thing. And if everybody's the same, then there is no reason or challenge or expectation even to do anything better than anybody else. It's just all the same. So, who cares? I'm not saying we leave people behind. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that the idea that everyone can be equal is a bogus idea. It's not tenable.
Yeah, I would, and I don't necessarily say, I'm not necessarily saying that they would all be at like so you still have to have somebody cleaning the sewer and somebody sweeping and whatnot. But so I agree with you there. But what I'm mainly talking about is the basic human rights thing, right? So like I'll be, what am I going to be, 26 this year? I don't remember. I think 26. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Anyways, I don't have health insurance. Barely And so, like, if so, let's say something happened to me right now, right? My employer doesn't offer health insurance. We're too small of a company to offer it. Also, back when I was at Doug Fur, the them offering it through whoever the fuck they offered it through, it was like a third of our fucking paychecks, and we were like, no, we're gonna opt out of that because I
Right.
need that money to live. And so,
But you're wedging your analogy into a system that I don't believe should exist in the first place. An international, or at least a national size health insurance company who thinks you're a number and a dollar figure, and that's all you are. And because they have to pay doctors through the nose, you have to pay them through the nose. It's a broken system, completely a broken system.
but the system we have is broken now.
That's what I'm saying. I don't disagree with that. But again, if you had, this is what I said before, like healthcare is one of the things that I do believe the government should provide basic healthcare for its people. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the people ought to get behind that and say, hey, this is one of those things that we, the people, believe it needs to do. It needs the government needs to. Here's my take on it. If you're going to
Mm-hmm.
have the government provide anything and stay out of your bedroom and stay out of your wallet, then you're going to say, okay, I'm going to pay a certain amount. Let's call it a flat tax. The government's going to be limited to the safety on the streets with a police force that's going to make sure no one's speeding or doing something dumb or driving drunk or whatever. We're going to take care of the infrastructure, roads, power, sewer, electric, water. We're going to take care of healthcare, basic healthcare for people to make sure that they're taken care of and that they can be healthy. And um, let's see. Other than that, I don't know what else the government really needs to be involved in. They don't need to be involved in whether I can smoke in a restaurant or not. They don't need to be involved whether or not I want to have an abortion or not. They don't need to be involved in, take your pick of the thousand things. We don't need to be involved in, some foreign country somewhere trying to change out one dictator for another. We don't need to be involved in the Middle East. Just take your pick.
Mm-hmm.
That government doesn't need to be doing all that shit. It's a complete waste of our tax dollars, and we're just over here going, "Yay, freedom!" and giving it all away.
Yeah, for the most part,
And
I agree. Yeah.
and to me, that's just slavery. It's just asking to spend more and more of the money that we earn. Not just me. It's not just my hard-earned dollars. It's yours, and it's the guy who is sweeping the floor and emptying the trash can. He's paying taxes too, you know, and he's paying taxes so that some guy can, sit in some fancy office and make a bunch of rules. Um, and that guy doesn't know him from anybody, and has no reason to even care about him as a person. And the
Yeah, but
representative form of government's good, but when the states divest their power to the federal government because of the almighty dollar, forget it. You just gave away all your power.
yeah, yeah. I just don't see why. So let's say, just take the basics of what you just said. Why is it so bad to then expand upon that to a federal level, and then a maybe eventually, again,
It's
I'm
too
saying
big.
pie
My
in the
my
sky.
my argument would be it's too big.
But if you think that everyone should have healthcare, why wouldn't you advocate that everyone should have healthcare? Because when I'm advocating everyone should have healthcare, I mean me. I mean, uh, my next door neighbor. I mean the guy who lives down the street. I mean the guy that lives over in Arizona that I know. I mean the guy that lives in South America. I mean globally, if you're a human, I think that you should have the basic right to health.
Right.
And so, and I don't know if you necessarily would disagree with that. So I'm just wondering why let's say small government, okay, let's say, because the government that I'm proposing would be fully subservient to the people, right? But let's take a libertarian style government, okay? And you just expand upon it, expand upon it, expand upon it, okay? With the tenements of what you are saying, right? So, yeah, each individual liberty, right? So, like, this big government would not be allowed to say what happens in your bedroom or whether or not someone gets an abortion, et cetera, et cetera. But they do supply things um, like healthcare, and they do at least basic healthcare, and they do this through either a tax-based income or income-based flat tax. Um, like you said, why can't that be scalable? Is all I'm saying.
I just
Why
think
why
go ahead.
why? Because in my mind, it's like, okay, if I think that this is a basic human right, then I'm going to advocate that to be a basic human right all around. And then how do I for me, I take it to the point of like, how do I guarantee that? How do I try and make it so it happens? And I see the only way to actually make it happen where you can have people be equal is to have a government that is eventually federalized, globalized, making these extreme steps. Now, like I explained in the last podcast, I would be very the civil liberties and whatnot of people would be of utmost importance in this style of socialist government as well. Meaning, like I said, they don't have a say of whether who's in your bedroom. You know, you have like everyone is entitled to have a gun. All these sorts of things would be, as far as civil liberties, be protected by this government. And so, specifically with healthcare, I get a little hot and heated about it because it just doesn't compute to me.
Well, I guess what I would say is that in theory, I think the idea of global basic healthcare is great. The problem is that the the larger an entity gets, the less controllable it gets. The less we have the ability to make change at the local level when something's going wrong. So,
Mm-hmm.
good example is um, if you own a company and your company, you start your company, you go out, you start doing stuff. Um, you're a member of your community, yada yada yada. And then one day you build your company up big enough, and somebody comes along and says, "You know what? That company's really great. We're going to buy that company from you. Is that all right?" And you go, "Yeah, sure. Let me sell my company." And so you sell your privately owned Arizona or Oregon based company to some big conglomeration, some big corporation. And now, what used to be special and used to be close and used to be, you could actually touch it, see it, know it, now is completely lost. And you don't have the ability, I don't have the ability, you don't have the ability to go into that business and say, "Hey, this isn't what we paid for. This isn't what we want. If you don't do what you were doing before, if you don't do the right thing, we're going to quit buying your product." And you have no ability. I mean, how many people can, how many times have people tried to boycott Disney? You're never going to boycott Disney into any kind of pain.
No.
First off, people are like holding the sign, "Boycott Disney," and then when you turn and look, they run inside the gate because they can't miss Goofy in the Hall of Presidents. But again, I go back to when you start scaling things up, all of a sudden you lose all the personal touch. You lose the ability to look somebody in the eye and have them care about who you are as a person and the thoughts and desires and needs that you have because it's some giant corporation, some giant entity. And we just end up back where we are now, where eventually, maybe it's not today, maybe it's not tomorrow, but 10, 20, 30 years down the road, now we've got this worldwide bureaucracy that has just grown and grown and grown and become this thing that's uncontrollable. And, that's really truly why I think having that local touch is the most important. And I'll add that, let's say, for instance, uh, Oregon goes, "Hey, we really like this form of government. Let's adopt this form of government. This is the way we're going to govern Oregon. We're going to secede from the United States, and we're going to, or even stay in the United States, but we're going to really govern this way. This is so important to us." I think you'd have to secede to do the socialist idea you're talking about, even the libertarian idea I'm talking about, probably. But and then next thing you know, Washington's like, "Hey, those people over in Oregon got it pretty good. How come?" Well, have you noticed? They keep a lot of their money at home. They're not sending all their money back to Washington. The industry that they have now, they're becoming self-sufficient. They're selling to each other. They're not importing so much stuff from out of the country and out of the state instead. So that money's making its way within the state more than ever. And then people in Washington start going, "Hey, that's pretty cool. Let's do that." And then they start following that. Oh, what's their healthcare system? Seems like they do really well. They have like next to no, healthcare issues. They figured it all out. That's a really great system. Let's do the same thing. So you end up with a patchwork of similar governmental setups, but they're all done organically at the grassroots level.
Mm. Something to chew on. Well, we're at about time. Well, we're actually way over time, but that's cool. Who cares? I wanted to continue that out a little bit. Yeah, I just think we just disagree on how that could be implemented, but that's okay. That's what the Fuck You Dad episode's all about.
Yes, it is.
All right, guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, whatever the fuck else. I have pop-ups near my face. Whatever these things tell you to do, go do them. If you're listening, yeah, thanks for listening. And anyways, I'm gonna stop recording now. I am so tired. If y'all can't tell. Deuces.